Trump has taken in his fight to enforce an end to birthright citizenship to the Supreme Court. He wants the Supreme Court to narrow lower court orders that blocked his move. Now, Trump wants to stop birthright citizenship for any child born in the US to undocumented immigrants and even foreigners here on temporary visas. Richard, the Trump administration's emergency appeals to the Supreme Court is not about the constitutionality per se of the executive order that he has enforced, but what his administration calls in that emergency filing, a modest request to reduce the scope of the lower court injunctions. What does that mean?
What we have here is a federal district court has imposed a nationwide injunction, not just in the district where the court sits, but the entire country. Arguably, this is an expansive use of judicial power that exceeds the power of a federal district judge sitting in one sitting. The problem is that if you don't have a nationwide injunction that is appealed up through the courts of appeals, ultimately to the Supreme Court, what you're going to have is injunctions in cities all over the country from federal judges. And you might have a disagreement among the federal judges with hundreds of cases. And so the nationwide injunction, as much as the Trump administration objects to it, is the best way to get this issue up to the Court of Appeals, to the United States Supreme Court, where I believe the Supreme Court of the United States will conclude that born in the USA means born in the USA. A natural-born citizen is someone who's born here in our country, and we're not going to ask about the immigration status of their parents. And that's been the law for well over a century, and I believe the Supreme Court will adhere to that law. And I should add that some of our best immigrants who have done the most for the United States come from India. And we need more people coming here from India and other countries around the world. And that's the way we're going to truly make America great again.
All right, Andrew, one of the groups that would be affected are Indians here on work permits. But let's say that the Supreme Court agrees. Can't mothers just hop from one state to another to have their babies to get that birthright citizenship?
Well, I will say, preface my comments by saying, look over my shoulder. I was born in England, immigrated to Canada, then immigrated to the United States. So I'm very favorably disposed towards immigrants and immigration. Secondly, though, the 14th Amendment was passed in a very specific historical context. It was meant to ensure that enslaved people and their children, in the aftermath of the Civil War in this country, were considered to be and treated as full citizens, full stop. And that was expanded in 1898 to ensure that every child of a lawful resident of this country, a legal immigrant to this country, was also entitled to that birthright citizenship. But it all turns on this phrase in the 14th Amendment, which was passed after the Civil War, obviously, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Now, if you are an Indian diplomat working in Washington and you are pulled over for speeding, there's no court, there's no police, you cannot be tried. So that's one way of thinking about not subject to the jurisdiction of. If you're an unlawful migrant to this country and you're pulled over for speeding, you can still get a ticket. So that's the expansive understanding of subject to the jurisdiction thereof. But there's a narrower version which the Trump administration is pushing, which is if you don't have a visa, if you don't have a green card, if you're not a natural-sized citizen and you're not a natural-born citizen, you're not subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And therefore, people who arrive at 8.5 months pregnant, have a baby in the United States, and then try to claim that that baby is automatically, by birthright, an American citizen, that's problematic from that more restrictive understanding of subject to the jurisdiction thereof.
Andrew, Richard, I have to leave it there for now. Thank you very much for your time here on Washington Watch.